Hey guys, this is AJ from Edge's Adventures, and happy Star Wars Sunday, and also happy Easter. Today's fanfic will be What If Obi-Wan Survived? So let's start this. Alright. As the Death Star exploded, Obi-Wan Kenobi clung to a piece of debris, desperately trying to maintain his grip. He had never felt so alone, so powerless. He failed to protect his Padawan. He failed to protect his apprentice, Anakin Skywalker, from the seduction of the dark side, and now he had failed to defeat Darth Vader. But then, a sudden jolt shook the debris, and Obi-Wan felt himself being pulled towards his ship. He looked up to see a familiar face. It was his former student, Luke Skywalker. "Come on, old friend. We've got to get you out of here," Luke shouted over the roar of the explosions. Obi-Wan nodded, his heart heavy with grief and regret. He climbed aboard the ship, and Luke piloted them away from the crumbling Death Star. As they flew through space, Luke turned to Obi-Wan. "I thought you were gone for good," he said, relief evident in his voice. Obi-Wan sighed. "I should be," he replied. "I failed, Luke. I failed to stop Anakin from turning to the dark side, and I failed to defeat Vader." Luke shook his head. "No, you didn't fail," he said. "You taught me everything I know. You gave me the strength to fight the Empire and become a Jedi, and you sacrificed yourself so that we could escape. You're a hero, Obi-Wan." Obi-Wan smiled weakly. "Thank you, Luke. But there is still much to be done. The Empire is still strong, and we must continue to fight." Luke nodded. "I know, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to bring them down." Obi-Wan put a hand on Luke's shoulder. "I have faith in you, my young Padawan. Together, we will bring balance to the Force." Luke smiled, a sense of determination in his eyes. "I won't let you down, Master." And so, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker flew off into the galaxy, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and determined to keep the light of the Jedi burning bright. Would Obi-Wan go back to Yavin 4 with Luke and Leia and tell them Vader was their father? Obi-Wan Kenobi knew that the time had come to reveal the truth about Luke Skywalker's father. As he and Luke landed on Yavin 4, Obi-Wan knew that he couldn't keep the truth hidden any longer. Leia Organa was waiting for them, and Obi-Wan could sense the tension in the air. "Welcome back," Leia said, her voice tight with emotion. "We heard about what happened on the Death Star. I'm sorry about Obi-Wan." Luke nodded, his eyes downcast. Obi-Wan stepped forward. "Thank you, Leia. But there is something I must tell you." Leia looked at him quizzically. While Luke appeared apprehensive, Obi-Wan took a deep breath before continuing. "Anakin Skywalker was your father, Luke. And Leia, he was your father too." There was a moment of stunned silence. As both Luke and Leia tried to process what they had just heard. Finally, Leia spoke up. "What do you mean, he was our father? Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. How could he be our father?" Obi-Wan sighed. "It's a long story, Leia, but Anakin was once a Jedi, just like Luke and me. He was my apprentice and a brave warrior, but he was seduced by the dark side and became Darth Vader. He betrayed the Jedi and the Republic and became one of the Emperor's most powerful enforcers." Luke spoke up. "But how could he be our father? We are both born We were both born after he became Darth Vader. Obi-Wan nodded. That's true, Luke. But before he turned to the dark side, Anakin had fallen in love with Padme Amidala, Leia and your mother. She was pregnant with... But Anakin had fallen in love with Padme Amidala, Leia and your mother. She was pregnant with both of you when she died. And Anakin thought that you both died with her, but I managed to hide you from him and the Emperor. Leia was crying now. So he's our father, and he's a monster, she said. Obi-Wan shook his head. No, Leia. He was a good man once, and he could be redeemed. That is why we must continue to fight the Empire, and why Luke must confront Darth Vader. Luke looked at Obi-Wan, his eyes filled with determination. I'll do it, he said. I'll confront him, and I'll bring him back to the light. Obi-Wan smiled. I know you will, my young Padawan, and I'll be with you every step of the way. And so, Obi-Wan, Luke, and Leia sat down to talk, to discuss the truth about their past and their future. It was a difficult conversation, but it was also one that needed to happen. For Obi-Wan, it was a reminder of the power of the Force and the importance of hope and redemption, even in the darkest of times. What would Vader do after the destruction of the Death Star and the survival of Obi-Wan? After the destruction of the Death Star and the apparent death of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader was filled with a sense of frustration and anger. He had failed to capture the rebels. He had failed to defeat Obi-Wan once and for all. But as he returned to the Imperial fleet, Vader's thoughts turned to his true master, the Emperor. As Vader made his way to the Emperor's throne room, he could feel his master's presence in the Force. The Emperor was pleased with the destruction of the Death Star, but he was also wary of the rebels and their ability to strike at the heart of the Empire. Lord Vader, the Emperor said as Vader knelt before him, I sense your anger and your frustration. What troubles you? Vader spoke carefully. Master, the rebels destroyed the Death Star, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, he survived. The Emperor leaned forward in his throne. Kenobi, how is that possible? I felt his presence fade away as the Death Star was destroyed. Vader shook his head. I saw him, Master. He was on the rebel ship that escaped the battle. He must have found a way to survive. The Emperor stroked his chin thoughtfully. This is troubling news, Vader. Kenobi is a powerful Jedi, and he could become a thorn in our side. But fear not. We will deal with him in due time. For now, our focus must be on the rebels. Vader nodded. Yes, Master. But what about Luke Skywalker? He was responsible for the destruction of the Death Star. The Emperor smiled. Skywalker, a powerful Jedi, to be sure. But he is still young and inexperienced, and he has much to learn. We will use his weakness to our advantage. Vader bowed his head. As you wish, Master. The Emperor leaned back in his throne, his eyes gleaming with a sinister light. Vader, my friend, we are on the brink of a great victory. The Rebel Alliance will soon be crushed, and the galaxy will be ours. And you, my apprentice, will be the one to bring us to that victory. Vader looked up, a sense of pride and determination filling him. I will not fail you, master, he said, and with those words, Vader left the Emperor's throne room, ready to do whatever it took to bring the rebels to heel and to prove his worth to his master. But as he walked through the halls of the Imperial Star Destroyer, Vader couldn't help but think of Obi-Wan and of the past that he had left behind. A sense of regret and longing filled him, but he quickly pushed those emotions aside. He was Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, and he had a galaxy to conquer. Would Vader scour the galaxy for Obi-Wan? After his conversation with the Emperor, Darth Vader knew that his focus needed to be on the Rebel Alliance and their leaders. However, the thought of Obi-Wan Kenobi lingered in the back of his mind like a gnawing ache. He couldn't shake the feeling that his former mentor, was still out there somewhere, waiting to strike. As the Imperial fleet continued its campaign against the rebels, Vader kept his ear to the ground for any signs of Obi-Wan's whereabouts. He interrogated captured rebels, probed the depths of the Force for any hints of Kenobi's presence, and even dispatched bounty hunters to scour the galaxy for any leads. But despite his efforts, Vader could find no trace of his former master. It was as though Obi-Wan had vanished into thin air. Frustration gnawed at Vader's soul. He had come so close to defeating Obi-Wan once before, and he couldn't stand the thought that the old man had managed to slip through his fingers. One day, as the Imperial fleet was en route to another rebel stronghold, Vader received a communication from one of his bounty hunters. The hunter had discovered a small colony on a remote planet that was rumored to be a refuge for Jedi. Vader's heart leapt in his chest. Could Obi-Wan be hiding there? Without hesitation, Vader ordered the fleet to change course and head to the remote planet. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, Vader felt a prickling of anticipation. If Obi-Wan was here, he would finally have his chance to defeat his old master once and for all. But as the Imperial troops descended upon the Jedi colony, they found no sign of Obi-Wan. The Jedi who lived there were young and inexperienced, mere Padawans who posed no threat to the Empire. And as Vader scoured the colony for any sign of his former master, he realized with a sense of bitter disappointment that Obi-Wan was not there. Frustrated and angry, Vader gathered his troops and left the planet. As he retreated to his ship, he couldn't help but wonder where Obi-Wan could be hiding. Master, Vader said to the Emperor as he knelt before him once more. I have scoured the galaxy for any sign of Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I have found nothing. The Emperor smiled. Do not worry, my friend. Kenobi will reveal himself in time, and when he does, we will be ready. Vader nodded, but his heart was heavy with the knowledge that his former master was still out there somewhere, waiting for his chance to strike. And as he left the Emperor's throne room, he couldn't help but wonder What other secrets the galaxy was keeping from him? Would Obi-Wan take Luke and Leia to Dagobah to be trained by Yoda? If Obi-Wan survived his battle with Vader and escaped with Luke and Leia, it's possible that he would consider taking them to Dagobah to be trained by Master Yoda. Obi-Wan knew that Yoda was one of the few remaining Jedi Masters in the galaxy, and that he was the best person to teach the twins in the ways of the Force. As they traveled through space, Obi-Wan and the twins discussed their options. Master, where will we go now? Luke asked, his eyes bright with curiosity. Obi-Wan smiled at him. We will go to Dagobah, Luke. There, we will seek out Master Yoda, who will teach you and your sister in the ways of the Force. Yoda? Leia repeated, her eyebrows raised in surprise. I've heard of him. He's a legendary Jedi Master, isn't he? Obi-Wan nodded. Indeed he is, and he is the best teacher you could hope to have. Luke looked excited at the prospect of meeting Yoda. Will he teach us to use lightsabers? He asked eagerly. Obi-Wan chuckled. Perhaps, but the lightsaber is not the most important tool in a Jedi's arsenal. Yoda will teach you to use the Force, which is far more powerful than any weapon. As they approached Dagobah, Obi-Wan explained to the twins that they needed to be patient and respectful when they met Yoda. The old Jedi Master was wise, but he could also be gruff and unapproachable. Remember, Obi-Wan said as they landed on the swampy planet, Yoda may seem small and frail, but he is a master of the Force. Treat him with respect, and he will teach you all you need to know. As they approached Yoda's hut, Obi-Wan and the twins sensed the old Jedi's presence. He emerged from the shadows, his small green form hunched over a cane. Oh, Obi-Wan, he said in his gruff voice. Good to see you, it is. And these are your younglings, I presume? Obi-Wan introduced Luke and Leia to Yoda, and the old Jedi Master eyed them both critically. He muttered. Strong in the Force, they are, but much training they will need. Over the coming weeks and months, Yoda put Luke and Leia through their paces, teaching them the ways of the Force and honing their skills. Obi-Wan watched with pride as the twins grew stronger and more confident with each passing day. And as they trained, Obi-Wan couldn't help but wonder what their future held. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and the Empire would stop at nothing to crush the Rebel Alliance. But with the twins' growing mastery of the Force, there was hope that they could one day bring peace to the galaxy once more. What would Yoda and Chewie do while Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan were on Dagobah with Yoda? Assuming that Han and Chewie were still part of the Rebel Alliance at this point, they would likely have continued to help the cause while Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan were on Dagobah training with Yoda. One possibility is that they could have been sent on a mission to gather information or supplies for the rebellion. As the captain of the Millennium Falcon, Han was an experienced smuggler and could have used his connections to acquire what they needed. As they flew through space, Chewie worked on repairs to the ship while Han monitored their progress. Chewie, pass me the hydro spanner, Han said, holding out his hand. Chewie growled a response and handed over the tool. Thanks. We should be coming up on the coordinates for the meeting point soon. Chewie let out a low grumble in agreement. As they landed on a remote planet to meet their contact, Han couldn't help but worry about his friends on Dagobah. I hope they're doing all right, he said, leaning against the Falcon's console. Chewie patted him on the shoulder reassuringly. They're in good hands with Master Yoda, Han said, more to himself than to Chewie. Their meeting with the contact went smoothly, and they were able to acquire the supplies the rebellion needed. As they headed back to the rebel base, Han couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Alright, so what Chewie says, I'll just say what he says about that. What's wrong? What's wrong? Chewie asked, noticing Han's tension. What's wrong? Chewie asked, noticing Han's tension. Okay, so I'm just gonna read the normal saying first, and then I'm gonna read the way Chewie would say it. What's wrong? Chewie asked, noticing Han's tension. Chewie asked, noticing Han's tension. I don't know. I just have a bad feeling about this, Han said, his hand on his blaster. As they approached the base, they could see that it was under attack. Imperial ships were swarming around it, firing their weapons. Chewie, get to the guns, Han said, his voice urgent. We have to help our friends. Chewie let out a fierce roar as he took control of the turrets. Han piloted the Falcon through the chaos, dodging laser blasts and enemy ships. We're almost there, Han shouted over the din of battle. As they flew over the base, Han and Chewie opened fire on the Imperial ships, taking out as many as they could. We have to get them out of there, Han said, his jaws set in determination. Chewie nodded, his eyes fierce with anger. They managed to pick up several rebel fighters, and before they were forced to retreat. As they flew away from the battle, Han couldn't help but think about what had happened. We have to keep fighting, he said to Chewie, for Luke, Leia, and all the others who have been lost to the Empire. Chewie growled a response, and Han knew that they were in this fight together, no matter what. Would Yoda still die? Yes, Yoda would still die, as it was a natural part of his life cycle. Assuming that Luke and Leia had completed their training on Dagobah and had returned to the Rebel Alliance with Obi-Wan, Yoda would likely have passed away after imparting his final words of wisdom to Luke. As Luke and Yoda sat together in the hut on Dagobah, Yoda could sense that his time was drawing near. He looked at Luke with his deep, wise eyes and spoke in his signature syntax. Much to learn you still have, Yoda said, his voice soft but firm. Luke nodded, his expression serious. I will continue to learn, Master Yoda. I won't let you down. Yoda smiled faintly. Already know that which you need, he said. The Force will guide you. Luke bowed his head respectfully. Thank you, Master Yoda. Your guidance has been invaluable. Yoda's eyes closed briefly, and when he opened them again, he seemed to twinkle with an otherworldly light. Time it is, he said, for me to go. Luke's heart sank, and he felt a lump in his throat. Master Yoda, Yoda held up a hand, interrupting him. No need to grieve, young Skywalker. Rejoice, we must, in the time we have had together. Luke nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of his eyes. I understand, Master Yoda. Yoda closed his eyes once more, and Luke could sense his life force fading away. He felt a deep sense of loss and sadness, but also a sense of gratitude for having known such a wise and powerful Jedi Master. As Yoda's body faded into the Force, Luke bowed his head in respect, feeling the weight of his responsibility as a Jedi. He knew that Yoda's legacy would live on through him, and that he had much to do in order to honor that legacy. Would Obi-Wan, Luke, and Leia go to face Palpatine and Vader and bring Vader back to the light? It is possible that Obi-Wan, Luke, and Leia would attempt to face Palpatine and bring Vader back to the light. But it would depend on their motivations and beliefs at that point in the story. Assuming that they were still committed to defeating the Empire and saving the galaxy, it's possible that they would see redeeming Vader as a key part of that mission. As they approached the Imperial stronghold where Palpatine was located, Obi-Wan spoke in a serious tone. "We must be careful," he said. "The dark side is strong here, and Palpatine is a powerful opponent." Luke nodded, his expression determined. "I know, Master, but we can't let him continue to rule the galaxy. We have to stop him." Leia's face was set in a determined frown. "And we have to save Vader," she added. "He's still our father, and he deserves a chance to redeem himself." Obi-Wan regarded them both with a mix of pride and concern. "We will do what we can," he said, "but we must be prepared for anything." As they approached the stronghold, they could sense the dark energy emanating from within. They moved cautiously, avoiding patrols and traps as they made their way closer to Palpatine's chambers. Finally, they stood before the Emperor himself, flanked by his loyal Sith Lords. Vader stood at his side, his expression conflicted. "You are too late, rebels," Palpatine sneered. "The power of the dark side is too strong for you to defeat." Obi-Wan stepped forward, his lightsaber ignited. "We'll see about that," he said. A fierce battle ensued, with the rebels fighting bravely against the powerful Sith Lords. Luke and Leia worked together, using their skills and their connection to the Force to overcome their opponents. Obi-Wan faced off against Palpatine himself, deflecting the Emperor's attacks with his lightsaber and countering with his own strikes. Meanwhile, Vader watched from the sidelines, torn between his loyalty to the Emperor and his love for his children. As the battle raged on, he could feel the pull of the light side, tempting him to break free from Palpatine's grasp. Finally, as Luke and Leia managed to defeat their foes and Obi-Wan engaged Palpatine in a fierce duel, Vader stepped forward, his lightsaber ignited. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice strained. "I can't keep following you, Master. I want to be with my family." Palpatine snarled, his eyes flashing with rage. "You are a fool, Vader," he spat. "You will regret this decision." But Vader was resolute. He stepped forward, joining his children and his former mentor in the fight against the Emperor. Together, they managed to overwhelm Palpatine and bring him to his knees. As the Emperor lay defeated, the rebels and their former enemy regarded each other with a mix of relief and disbelief. Obi-Wan spoke, his voice filled with emotion. "Anakin, you have done what you needed to do," he said. "You have redeemed yourself." Vader looked at him, tears in his eyes. I don't know what to say, he stammered. Leia stepped forward, embracing her father. We love you, Dad, she said. We're so glad you're back with us. Luke joined the embrace, and for a moment they were family once again, united in their triumph over the dark side. What would Obi-Wan, Luke, Leia, and Anakin do after they defeated Palpatine? After defeating Palpatine, Obi-Wan, Luke, Leia, and Anakin would likely take some time to regroup and process the enormity of what had just happened. They would also need to figure out what to do next. Now that the Empire had been defeated and the galaxy was in a state of flux. As they emerged from the stronghold, they were greeted by a throng of rebels and citizens who had been fighting against the Empire for years. Cheers and applause erupted as they made their way through the crowd, their lightsabers held aloft. Obi-Wan looked around at the sea of faces, his expression a mixture of pride and sadness. So much has been lost, he said quietly, but we have a chance to rebuild now. Luke nodded, his own face grave. It's going to be a long road, he said, but we can do it, together. Leia took Anakin's hand, squeezing it gently. And we have a lot of work to do, she said. Rebuilding, healing, and making sure something like this never happens again. Anakin looked at his daughter, a new light in his eyes. I want to help, he said, in any way I can. Obi-Wan regarded him for a moment, then nodded. You have much to make up for, Anakin, he said. But I believe you are capable of great things. They made their way to the rebel base, where they were greeted with open arms. There was a sense of relief and hope in the air, as people began to imagine a future without the oppression of the Empire. In the days that followed, they worked tirelessly to begin the process of rebuilding. Leia led the charge, working closely with the other leaders of the rebellion to establish a new government and ensure that the rights of all citizens were protected. Luke and Anakin worked to train a new generation of Jedi, using the knowledge and wisdom they had gained from their experience. They also helped to rebuild the Jedi Temple, which had been destroyed during the Clone Wars. Obi-Wan, meanwhile, served as a mentor and guide to the younger Jedi, passing on his own knowledge and experience to the next generation. As they worked, they could feel the hope and optimism growing stronger with each passing day. They knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but they were determined to build a better future for themselves and for the galaxy. And as they looked back on all that they had overcome, they knew that they had truly become a family, bound together by the bonds of love and the power of the Force. Would Anakin get a new suit from the rebels? After defeating Palpatine and helping to establish the new government, Anakin would likely need a new suit, and his old one would have been damaged in the fight. Leia was the one who brought up the idea of getting Anakin a new suit. We need to show him that he's truly part of the team, she said, and having a new suit would help with that. Luke nodded in agreement. I think it's a good idea, he said, but where are we going to get one? Leia had already thought of that. There's a team of rebel engineers who have been working on new equipment and technology, she said. I'm sure they could come up with something. The group made their way to the engineering lab, where they were greeted by a group of excited engineers. They explained the situation, and the engineers immediately set to work, discussing ideas and possibilities. After several hours of planning and discussion, they came up with a design that they felt would work. It was sleek and modern, with armor plating that would provide protection without hindering movement. When the suit was ready, Anakin put it on and tested it out. It fit him perfectly, and he could already feel the difference. This is incredible, he said, looking down at himself. Thank you, Leia smiled. You're one of us now, she said, and we take care of our own. Anakin nodded, a sense of belonging and purpose settling over him. He knew that he had a lot of work to do to make up for his past mistakes, but with his new suit and the support of his new family, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. How would Han, Chewie, and Lando react to seeing Vader as Anakin Skywalker? When Han, Chewie, and Lando returned to the Rebel base and saw Anakin Skywalker, formerly Darth Vader, standing there with Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan, they were all shocked and taken aback. Chewie let out a growl, while Han simply stood there with his mouth hanging open in disbelief. That's Vader. That's Vader? He said, looking at Anakin. The guy who's been trying to kill us all these years? Lando, who had been skeptical of Anakin's redemption, stepped forward cautiously. Is this some kind of trick? He asked, eyeing Anakin warily. Luke stepped forward, a reassuring smile on his face. No trick, he said. Anakin has turned away from the dark side and has helped us to defeat the Empire. He's one of us now. Obi-Wan nodded in agreement. Anakin has been given a second chance, he said, and he has proven himself to be a valuable ally. Han still looked skeptical, but Chewie let out a growl of approval. Lando studied Anakin for a moment longer, then nodded. All right, he said. If you say he's on our side, I'll trust you. Anakin looked around at the group, a sense of gratitude and relief washing over him. Thank you, he said. I know I have a lot to make up for, but I'm ready to do whatever it takes to make things right. Han still looked a bit unsure, but he nodded. We'll keep an eye on you, he said. But if you're really on our side, then I guess we can give you a chance. Chewie let out another growl, and Anakin smiled. It wasn't going to be easy, but he was grateful to have the support of his new allies. With their help, he knew that he could make a difference and help bring peace to the galaxy. Alright guys, just 6 more left. Would Anakin reunite with R2-D2? No. Would Anakin reunite with R2-D2 and give C-3PO's memories back? After the defeat of Palpatine and the establishment of the new government, Anakin was able to take some time to reconnect with his old droid friends. He had not seen R2-D2 and C-3PO since his transformation into Darth Vader. He was eager to catch up with them. He found R2-D2 in the hangar, where the little astromech was busy repairing a damaged X-Wing. Anakin approached him slowly, not wanting to startle him. "Hello, R2, he said softly. "It's been a long time." R2-D2 let out a series of beeps and whistles. Anakin smiled. "Well, glad to see you too," he said. "You're looking good." He knelt down next to the droid and patted him on the dome. R2-D2 beeped a grin, and Anakin's smile grew wider. "I've missed you too," he said. After spending some time catching up with R2-D2, Anakin turned his attention to C-3PO. The protocol droid was standing in a nearby room, looking a bit worse for wear. Anakin approached him slowly. "Hello, C-3PO, he said. "Do you remember me?" C-3PO looked at him blankly. "I'm sorry, sir," he said. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." Anakin sighed. He had forgotten that C-3PO's memory had been wiped, and the droid had no recollection of their past interactions. "I used to be a Jedi," Anakin said, hoping to jog C-3PO's memory. "And I used to work with their counterpart, R2-D2. C-3PO's eyes widened in recognition. "Oh, yes," he said. "I remember R2-D2, but I'm afraid my memory banks have been wiped. I don't recall any details about your past." Anakin nodded, understanding. "I see," he said. "Well, I'm glad to see you again, C-3PO, and I have a gift for you." He reached out and pulled out a small device. "This will restore your memory," he said. "You will be able to remember everything that happened before your memory wipe." C-3PO's eyes widened in amazement. "Oh, sir," he said. "Thank you so much. This is truly a gift beyond measure." Anakin smiled. "I'm happy to help," he said. "Now, let's get you fixed and get you fixed up and back to your old self." As he worked to restore C-3PO's memory, Anakin couldn't help but feel a sense of joy and relief. It was good to have his old friends back, and he was grateful for the opportunity to make things right. Would C-3PO tell Luke and Leia about Padme after Anakin gave him his memories back? As C-3PO's memory was being restored, he suddenly jolted and his eyes widened in surprise. "Oh my! Oh dear!" he exclaimed. "I'm remembering something quite significant. Master Anakin!" "Master Anakin?" Anakin turned his attention to the protocol droid. "What is it, C-3PO?" he asked. "It's about Padme, Master Anakin," C-3PO said. "I remember now. She was your wife." Anakin's eyes grew wide with shock. "What?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Master Anakin," C-3PO said. "I remember Padme. She was a kind and beautiful woman. You loved her very much." Anakin closed his eyes, memories of the past flooding back to him. "I do love her," he said, "more than anything in the galaxy." "I did love her," he said, "more than anything in the galaxy." Luke and Leia had been nearby, and they heard the conversation between Anakin and C-3PO. They approached Anakin, concern etched on their faces. "Anakin, are you okay?" Luke asked. Anakin opened his eyes and looked at his children. "I'm fine," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I just remembered something important. Something I thought I had lost forever." Leia stepped forward, her hand on Anakin's arm. "What is it? What is it, Father?" she asked. Anakin took a deep breath. "Padme," he said, "C-3PO just reminded me that she was my wife, your mother." Luke and Leia both looked stunned. "Our mother?" Leia said. "We never knew anything about her." "I never told you about her," Anakin said, his voice thick with regret. "I was afraid. Afraid you would hate me for what I had done. But now, I see that was a mistake." Luke put his hand on Anakin's shoulder. "We could never hate you, Father," he said. "We love you." Anakin looked at his children, tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for understanding." As the group stood there, lost in thought and emotion, C-3PO spoke up. "Master Luke, Princess Leia," he said. "There is more I remember about Padme. Would you like to hear it? Luke and Leia exchanged a look, then nodded. They wanted to know as much as possible about their mother. C-3PO began to recount the story of Padme Amidala, her bravery and her love for Anakin, and how she had ultimately given her life for her children. As he spoke, the group was transfixed, hanging on every word. When he finished, there was a moment of silence as everyone processed the new information. Anakin looked at his children, his heart full of love and regret. "I wish you could have known her," he said. "She was an amazing woman, and I made a terrible mistake in betraying her." Luke and Leia both hugged their father. "It's okay, Father," Leia said. "We forgive you, and we'll always love you." Anakin hugged his children tightly, tears streaming down his face. It was a moment of healing and reconciliation. And he was grateful for it. Would C-3PO reunite with Obi-Wan after getting his memories restored by Anakin? After Anakin gave C-3PO's memories back, the droid's demeanor shifted. He felt a sense of nostalgia and longing for the days that when he was in the presence of Obi-Wan Kenobi. C-3PO knew that Obi-Wan had survived Order 66, but he had not seen him since then. C-3PO approached Obi-Wan with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Obi-Wan looked at the droid with a smile on his face. "Hello, C-3PO. It's been a long time," Obi-Wan said. "Master Kenobi! Oh, how I have missed you," C-3PO exclaimed, his voice filled with emotion. "Anakin restored my memories, and I have remembered everything, including our time together." Obi-Wan placed his hand on C-3PO's metallic shoulder, his expression warm and sympathetic. "I'm glad to see you again, my friend. It's been too long." C-3PO nodded, his eyes glistening. Yes, indeed it has. How have you been, Master Kenobi?" Obi-Wan's expression turned solemn. "I've been through a lot, but I'm still here. The Force has been kind to me." C-3PO's eyes widened. "Oh, my! I have so many stories to tell you about what has happened since we had last met. The rebellion, Luke and Leia, Anakin's redemption. Obi-Wan's eyes widened in surprise. Anakin, you mean Vader? You mean Darth Vader? C-3PO nodded. Yes, Master Kenobi. Anakin Skywalker has been redeemed. He helped us defeat the Emperor and destroy the Death Star. Obi-Wan's expression softened. I never thought that would be possible. Anakin truly has come full circle. I hope he has found peace. C-3PO smiled. I believe he has, Master Kenobi, and I'm grateful to have my memories restored so that I could witness it all. Obi-Wan smiled at the droid. As am I, C-3PO. As am I. Would Anakin Skywalker face trial in front of the Rebel Alliance for the crimes he committed as Darth Vader? As the news of Anakin Skywalker's redemption and return to the light spread throughout the galaxy, it soon became clear that the question of what to do with him would have to be addressed. Some members of the Rebel Alliance were skeptical of his redemption and believed he should face trial for the atrocities he committed as Darth Vader. One of those people was Mon Mothma, the leader of the Rebel Alliance. She believed that Anakin's crimes could not be ignored, and that he should face a fair trial for them. Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa were both conflicted about this. They knew the crimes their father had committed, but they also believed in his redemption and wanted to give him a chance to prove himself. Anakin, for his part, was willing to accept whatever punishment the Alliance deemed fit. He knew he had done terrible things as Darth Vader and was ready to face the consequences. The Alliance ultimately decided to hold a trial for Anakin. The trial was conducted in a large hall on one of the Alliance bases, with Mon Mothma presiding over it. Anakin Skywalker, you stand accused of crimes against the galaxy, Mon Mothma began. How do you plead? Anakin stood up straight and looked Mon Mothma in the eye. Guilty, Your Honor. There was a murmur of surprise and disbelief from the crowd. Anakin's admission of guilt was unexpected, and many of the rebels had expected him to deny the charges and try to prove his innocence. Mon Mothma nodded solemnly. Very well. The charges against you are serious, Anakin Skywalker. However, your actions to defeat the Empire and destroy the Death Star cannot be ignored. The Alliance recognizes your redemption and is willing to take that into account when deciding your punishment. Anakin bowed his head, his expression contrite. Thank you, Your Honor. I accept whatever punishment you deem fit. The trial continued for several hours, with witnesses and evidence presented on both sides. In the end, the Alliance decided to show mercy and did not punish Anakin for his crimes as Darth Vader. Instead, he was given a chance to start anew and contribute to the rebuilding of the galaxy. Anakin was grateful for the Alliance's mercy and was determined to prove himself worthy of it. He knew he had a lot of work to do to make up for his past, but he was willing to do whatever it took to make amends. Alright, just 2 more left. What would Anakin, Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan do about the Imperial Remnant? After the trial, Anakin, Luke, Leia and Obi-Wan knew that the work was far from over. They had defeated Palpatine and the Empire, but there were still pockets of Imperial resistance scattered throughout the galaxy. Anakin was especially determined to help bring peace to the galaxy, knowing that he had been responsible for so much destruction as Darth Vader. He turned to his family and former mentor for guidance. "We need to find these Imperial remnants and put an end to them once and for all," Anakin said, his tone serious. Obi-Wan nodded. "Agreed, but we must be careful. The remnants likely the remnants are likely to be well armed and desperate, and they may be willing to do anything to hold on to their power." Leia spoke up, her expression determined. "We can't let fear stop us from doing what's right. We have to do what's willing to take risks. We have to be willing to take risks and do whatever it takes to ensure a peaceful future for the galaxy." Luke nodded. "But we can't do this alone." Luke added, "But we can't do this alone. We need to rally the support of the Rebel Alliance and any other groups that are fighting for peace and freedom." Anakin nodded, his eyes flashing with determination. "Then let's get to work. We have a lot of ground to cover, but I know we can do this." Together, the group set out to find and eliminate the remaining Imperial forces. They traveled from planet to planet, battling Imperial remnants and rallying support from those who were still fighting for their freedom. Over time, their efforts paid off. They were able to defeat the remaining Imperial forces, and the galaxy slowly began to heal from the wounds of the past. Anakin, Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan were hailed as heroes, and their efforts helped to usher in a new era of peace and prosperity for the galaxy. How would the Imperial remnant react to Vader being Anakin Skywalker and being redeemed? The news that Vader was actually Anakin Skywalker and had been redeemed sent shockwaves through the remaining Imperial forces. Many of them had been raised on stories of the fearsome Darth Vader and his loyalty to the Emperor, and the idea that he could be turned back to the light was almost incomprehensible. Some of the Imperial officers refused to believe it. "It's a trick," one shouted. "The rebels have brainwashed him, or he's playing some kind of game." Others, however, were more conflicted. They had heard stories that Darth Vader had been seen fighting alongside the rebels, and now the news that he was actually Anakin Skywalker seemed to confirm it. One officer spoke up, his tone hesitant. "But if Vader can be redeemed, what does that say about us? Are we really fighting for the right cause? Are we really doing what's best for the galaxy?" The others murmured in agreement, their expressions troubled. They had always believed that they were fighting to restore order and bring justice to the galaxy, but the revelation about Vader's true identity had shaken their beliefs. Meanwhile, Anakin and the others continued to work to bring peace to the galaxy, including offering amnesty to any Imperial forces who would lay down their arms and join their cause. Over time, many did, and the remaining Imperial forces would slowly but surely brought to heel. As they worked, Anakin remained haunted by the memories of his time as Darth Vader and the atrocities he had committed in service to the Empire, but he was also filled with hope for the future and the possibility of redemption for all of those who had been caught up in the violence and chaos of the past. Alright guys, now that will be the end of my fanfic. So right now we'll do my closing and say bye. Make sure to like, comment in the discussion tab, and subscribe. Now we'll see you all next time. Bye!